Good morning, Master. Good morning, friends, venerables. Um, Today is the Dizang Blessing Day. So I will spend a little time talking about the Bodhisattva Dizang and also, continue my talk about dukkha. Was wondering, can everybody hear me clearly? Good, good. So continuation of this year's topic, Dharma at difficult time. I've been talking about dukkha, basically about dukkha all these times during my Dharma talk. So this will be a continuation of what we did, what I did before. To recapture or review the previous talks, I focus on dukkha, the first noble truth. And there are some definitions. Dukkha, the Pali word, can be translated in English in the following way: suffering incapable of satisfaction, the unsatisfactory nature, painful, the ultimately unsatisfactory nature of temporary states and things. And because of impermanence, dukkha arises. Excuse me. So, what are the Four Noble Truths? We talk about dukkha, the actually facts of life. It is an innate characteristic of existence in this realm of samsara. And then, what causes dukkha? We have to find out. Craving, basically, we talk about, craving is the cause of dukkha. But then it's more than craving. Craving is a general term for the cause. If we dig deeper into the teaching of the Buddha, we'll find out that, craving is a main cause, but then there are many, many subdivisions. Then the Buddha taught us that, there is a way to put a stop or cessation of this dukkha or this suffering. The way to do is to practice the Eightfold Noble Truths. So those are the Four Noble Truths. So how do we practice? At the beginning, we have to face it. We have to know, we have to comprehend dukkha. And then we have to accept that is the fact of existence. Then we try to cut off the causes. The way to cut it off, again, is to practice diligently and heedfulness with the Eightfold Noble Path. Then when the time comes with enough practice, then we'll be able to attain or to experience cessation. Then we categorize dukkha generally or commonly into three categories: suffering of suffering, suffering of change, and the pervasive suffering, which basically, because we have this five aggregates, we went through the physical suffering, the mental suffering, which we can subdivide into the 8 kinds of suffering, the 11 kinds of suffering. That's what we have been talking about. So we suffer because we have these five aggregates. This is called the pervasive suffering, the suffering of existence. Giving, without any other definition or any other explanation, by existing, by having these five aggregates, we suffer. How? Physical form, we have the birth, sickness, old age, and death. And I wish anybody can tell me that birth is not suffering, sickness is not suffering, old age is not suffering, and death is not suffering. I wish someone can tell me that. Oh, I do enjoy all those processes. Feeling, even though we have the pleasant feeling, but don't forget, all phenomena are impermanent in nature. For the time being, we might experience some pleasant feelings, but it's going to go away. We cannot have that constantly. Perception, we're putting label on things, we're um, differentiating them, and we make judgments, and that is actually part of suffering. What if, we differentiate, we think that, a person is better than the other. We make judgments on a wrong, erroneous view. Those are actually lead to suffering. Relations, those are mental actions. There is actually, people would say that, okay, I think about killing this person, but I didn't do it. I'm just thinking about it. Don't forget that there's something called the hidden karmic energy. Whatever accumulate in the mind, in the volitional mind, eventually with the condition ripen, then we'll put into verbal or physical actions that actually it's very, very bad. It's going to lead to further and future suffering. Consciousness. This is a little bit complicated. Beginning, we have like the first five sensory consciousness, which when our eyes, for example, when our eyes sees in contact with the external object, we have the eye consciousness arises, right? Then we put judgments, which is the function of the sixth consciousness. Then this seventh consciousness is a bad, bad, bad guy because it constantly telling us that there is this I, there is this mind, and this is individually existent, permanently existing I. It's so much, creates so much painful and clinging to this so-called quote unquote I. And then we have this eighth consciousness, which, well, we were talking about this is a storage of our experience. This is the where the habitual pattern that is stored. But actually, eighth consciousness is more than that. More than that. I'm not going to go into detail because my focus is suffering. And you might think that, hey, Kathy, you have been talking about suffering. It's so pessimistic. It's so upsetting. Don't forget, if we don't realize it, if we don't know it in detail, if we don't face it, if we don't accept it, then how can we get rid of it? So, how do we exist? The Buddha said that in when he was teaching the Buddhist cosmology, that sentient beings or sentient beings exist in three types of forms or three forms. One is what we call the desire realm with this mind and body. Basically, desire is the key word here. If we don't have the desire, then whether it's desire to exist or desire not to exist, then we are born in this desire realm with all the three poisons: craving, aversion, ignorance. Then the next step up, and the form and formless, we need to get into very, very deep meditation to realize that. Okay. Form is still, we have this physical body, but the mental process it's more than the physical body as far as for importance. Formless is without the body, but we still have the consciousness. But we have to have, a person has to practice meditation to a certain level before they can reach those states. Okay, so I'm just, generally or just speaking of this so that we know that these are the way of existence. Focus on the desire realm. Dukkha, 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 because we're trapped into the samsara of this desire realm. And we know that there are 6 of them. Better off celestial beings, better off human beings, then a little bit better off, we go into the Asura realm. Then the 3 lower realm, it's nothing but suffering. Hungry ghost, animal, somebody will say that animal is better than hungry ghost. Somebody would say that hungry ghost is better than animal. But personally, I would think that animal realm maybe just a cinch better than the hungry ghost. Maybe. It all depends on, which viewpoint that you look at it. Okay. As far as for suffering, hungry ghosts suffer more than the animal realm in a certain way. But then, we'll talk about that in a bit. And of course, the worst would be the beings in hell. Okay, this is the cycle of rebirth in the desire realm. So let's talk about a little bit about the celestial beings. They're enjoying life now, indulge in sensory pleasures. They get what they want without, any physical sufferings. But then they don't have any incentive to practice the Dhamma. And eventually, when their good karma expires, they fall back down to the lower realms. So they're suffering because they fear and worry about falling back to the undesired realm. It is said in the sutra that, when a celestial being is beginning to, their good karma beginning to expire, they experience 5 kinds of decays. The flower on their crown start to wither. They lost interest in where they are staying. They even lost their self-awareness. Their robe soiled, their body become fetid, cease to give lights. Usually, they have lights around them. And then sweat pores come up from their armpit. Those are the 5 signs of decay. So on one hand, they're enjoying life. On the other hand, they're worrying. Okay. Is that suffering? Let's think about that. Now, human beings, we went through, birth, death, all those, pleasant, unpleasant feelings, all these. So the 3 types of suffering, as human being, we experience them, not just in the past life, not just in the present life. If we were born to be a human in the future, we still go through the three type of suffering. Then we have the 8 type of suffering. We have the 11 types of suffering, which we talk about, in my previous talk. But, but as human beings, we are actually a little bit better than the celestial being in 3 ways. First of all, we have good memories. We don't forget to practice the Dhamma. Okay, we have good memories. What we are practicing, learning, accumulating now is going to be with us. Okay, then we're able to practice the Buddha Dhamma. Remember the celestial beings, they're so much indulged in sensory pleasure, they don't have any incentive to practice. Okay, and then we can do it very vigorously, full with energy. We work hard, we can work hard. We don't lax off. We have the capability of doing that. So in these 3 ways, we're actually better than the celestial beings. Then we come to the next one, the Asura. Oh, these guys, they're full of aversion and jealousy. Always defeated and killed by the celestial beings because they're so envy, so jealous about the enjoyment of the celestial beings. So they start to fight, try to get better than them, but always fail. Hungry ghost suffer always being extremely hungry and thirst. Their mouth is very small, their stomach is very small. It is very difficult for food and drink for them to intake and digest. That's a big problem. Animal driven by impulse and instinct. They don't think, they're ignorant. They just prey on each other, suffer from killing and being killed. And ignorance is their characteristic. Now, come to the hell being. I'm just going through this, briefly and shortly, and then we'll, explain it in a more detailed way. Now, they suffer from intense forms of torture, mainly the physical body, because they suffer so much. They suffer so much. It's very difficult for them to recall what they had learned before. Even just mention the name of a Buddha. And then depend on the karma, beings in hell, they suffer through burning, freezing, beating up, being eaten alive. So even the Buddha cannot bear to describe the suffering of the hell realm. Let's stop here for just a minute. So generally, with a person not practicing, not understanding the Dhamma, or even they hear about the Dhamma and not truly understand, they'll think that these will happen. The cycle of samsara will happen after I pass away. I'm not going through any of them while I'm alive. So I just have to live at the present moment, right? Very famous word. Live at the present moment. What is the present moment? If I get angry. I'm actually falling down to the lowest realm of hell because the hellfire is burning inside of me. So I have this burning, not necessary we have to go through what the suttas say that, you're being put onto the uh, boiling oil or anything. Think about when the mind is so agitated, the person is so angry. Actually, we are boiling. Okay. Now, we might not, experience at this moment, I'm saying, being eaten alive, but we are being eaten by ourselves. We're chewing up by ourselves, by our anger, by our ignorance, by our craving. Something that I want, I can't get. My mind is burning. I'm chewing. My mind is being chewed up by those anxieties. So I'm going through the hell realm at that present moment. How about hungry ghost? I consider myself, being in the hungry ghost realm all the time because what I want, I can't eat with diabetic. Craving for it. Then come up with problems with this problem, that kind of problem. Of course, I'm in the human realm because, I have all these desires, uh, pleasant feeling at one time, unpleasant feeling at the other time. Animal instinct. Do we have that? Do we act up as animals at times? Celestial beings, sometimes we enjoy life so much and we forgot to practice. We are in this moment, at this present life, going through all the six samsaras, six realms of samsara. So we don't have to wait until we die. Samsara is here and now. Let's be aware of that. So the suffering of existence, because we have these five aggregates, because all compounded things are impermanent, because all conditioned existence are subject to arising and ceasing, because the existence of this physical body itself is suffering, because the mind and the body cannot abide in the world of peacefulness, agitating all the time, and we are not willingly to exist in this samsara. We are driven by the karmic energy. We're trapped in this cycle. And we're wandering within the time and space. We cannot get out of time and space and liberate from suffering. And with an unsettled mind is suffering. So therefore, having this mind and body is the root source of suffering. Pervasive suffering includes all the three kinds of suffering, whether it's suffering of impermanence. These can be all included in the pervasive suffering. Dukkha, dukkha, dukkha. Anicca, anicca, anicca. Anatta, anatta, anatta. This is the Buddha's teaching. Dukkha, dukkha, dukkha. And then, of course, we have all these explanations. Okay, this is in brief, attachment to the five aggregate is dukkha. Again, this is the Bodhisattva Kitigaba Dizang birthday Is that a birthday? I'm not quite sure. Should be a birthday, right? So anyway, we pay respect and tribute to the Bodhisattva Kidigaba. I believe I still have a talk in November. So at that time, I'll try to wrap up suffering. Hopefully, we can move next year into the cause of suffering. So you can tell that I'm trying to do the Four Noble Truths, right? Okay. Uh, there are two legendary stories about the Bodhisattva Kidigaba. Remember, we just mentioned the suffering, the three lower suffering realms, the most heavy and intense suffering will be the hell realm, right? So that this is related to the Bodhisattva Kidigaba. So I'm going to tell two stories. The first one is the Bodhisattva as a monk. So, and don't forget, these are legendary stories, okay? So he was a prince. His name actually is Ji Zhang, translated into Dizang from an ancient Korean kingdom, came to China to learn and practice the Dhamma. Let's see, I'm going to move this to this side. So in Tang Dynasty, he came to China to practice. Dizang was actually his Dhamma name. He built a hut in Zhouhua. Sorry, okay. Built a hut in Zhouhua Mountain. He was bitten by a snake, saved by a passing by woman. I'm going to go through this very fast. Stay in the hut for years until a scholar decided that, take sympathy on him, try to build him a temple. And there is an elder, he said that, he owned the Zhouhua Mountain. He said that, I'm going to build you a temple. Tell me how much land do you need? So he spread his robe, which covered the entire mountain. So that is why the elder Hun Ke decided to renounce the entire mountain as to Dizang. Okay. So he stayed in the mountain for 75 years, passed away there at the age of 99. 3 years later, they opened his tomb and find that his body did not decay. So his body relic is actually preserved it at the basement of a small temple at the back of the original temple. We've been there, 2010, a group of 16, 22, some from St. Louis, some from Chicago, some from Colorado. We went there and we visited. Of course, we did not have the opportunity to view the body relic of Dizang, but we view body relics of various monks and nuns there. So it actually exists, the body relic. Okay, the next one will be the Bodhisattva as a Brahmin maiden. So this is what I believe that they're chanting at the Dizang Hall right now. This is a sutra, a popular sutra that chanted by Chinese Buddhists. But we cannot trace back to where this sutra came from. There is no Sanskrit manuscript of this text. We don't know whether it's coming from India or China. So we cannot find the originality of this sutra, but it's very popular, very popular. And it was said that this sutra was spoken by the Buddha in the 33 heaven as a mark of gratitude to his beloved mother Maya. So the sutra actually divided into 3 sections. One is talking about the Dhamma, to leave the sea of suffering and realize the happiness of nirvana. and finally, ultimate attainment of Buddhahood. Then another section is teaching concerning the karmic retribution, practically describing the consequence if one creates for oneself by committing undesirable action. Okay, so what kind of action we perform is going to decide where is our destination will be, not one to one. There are causes, conditions, and results, but we have four conditions, six causes, and five results. They cross over. It's another talk. It's another, maybe at least 2-3 talks about this. And then the third part will be emphasizing the filial piety. I have problem pronouncing this one. So this is not only between, we ourselves and our parents. It's ultimately, the universal code for of duty and responsibility for all beings, because once upon a time, from the beginningness time, any being can be our parents. With that in mind, any being can be our mother, lives before, in the future. So it's not just, to our present parents. Then as a Brahmin maiden, this is what the sutra talk about. I'm not going to go through this because I'm almost running out of time. I have 4 minutes to go. So this is talking about, how they do. But I would like to introduce this very much. This is called Ulambama Sutra. This is not related to Dizang. This is talking about Venerable Mahamoggallana. And people in China sometimes mix up Dizang with this because, they start with trying to save their mother from suffering. Okay, so Dizang, on one hand, he, somebody called it she, okay, he actually make a great vow of saving all the beings. Okay, go back to the great vow. If the hell is not empty, I vow not to become a Buddha. Only when all sentient beings are saved, I then attained Buddha. So his goal is to save anybody down in the hell realm. If there is still one single being in hell, he won't attain the enlightenment. That's the vow of Adija. Now, while Venerable Moggallana, he asked, because he knew that, her mother was in the hungry ghost realm. So he tried to offer a bowl of rice to his mother, but his mother couldn't take it because, hungry ghosts, they have small throat, small stomach, and it turned out to be waste, the bowl of rice or bloody drinks. So he asked the Buddha, and the Buddha said that if you want to save your parents, present parent or the parents of the past 7 life, you offer food and necessary things to the monastic and Sangha community at the end of their rain retreat, which is July 15th. So in the Chinese tradition, July 14th, it was said that the door of the hungry ghost opened so that they can come out and receive the offer. Okay, the monastic then transfer all the merits to the deceased parents. So we're talking about 2 things. One, the Kidigaba was trying to salvage all beings in the hell realm. Moggallana initiated a tradition practice to feed and save beings in the hungry ghost. So they are actually practicing the metta bhavana. But don't wait. Don't wait. Be a Kidigaba ourselves. Make a great vow to get ourselves out of suffering, to help others from suffering. Don't wait. Act on it now. Don't wait. Be a Kidigaba ourselves. So the best way to cope with, not to escape, but to cope with difficult time, don't hide the head in the sand. Let's face it, suffering is a fact. Suffering is our life. Face the fact, comprehend it. Understand the body and mind. Truly know suffering is the fact of life. Face it, accept it, and try to resolve it. May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings live with ease. May all beings free from harm. May all beings be liberated, liberated, liberated. Namo Di Zhang Wang Pusa, Namo Di Zhang Wang Pusa, Namo Di Zhang Wang Pusa. Thank you very much.